I don't know why you clicked on this video, and today we're going to be talking about 5 things that I want every new music producer to know, or if you're already a professional, maybe you can get some inspiration from these points. I'm not here to waste your time. Let's get right into it. Number 1, DAW choice doesn't matter, at least not the way you think it does. My personal experience, all DAWs like Logic, flstudio, Ableton, they all have their purpose and they all have their own unique workflows and designs. Personally, I find some easier to work with than others, and I think it's the same for everyone else that's involved in this hobby and profession. My personal advice is try a free trial of each one until you find the one that works perfect for you and has the desired workflow that works for how you make beats or how you put out arrangements. I actually have an example of my own when it comes to this kind of thing. I used to use flstudio for everything I wanted to do, whether it was recording, whether it was making beats. It was just my go-to software, and I tried Ableton, tried Pro Tools, and it just wasn't for me. I eventually took college courses on music production, and that was strictly a logicpro based course. Ever since I took that course, I have loved logicpro. I think it's great for everything that I do personally. I've known some musicians and music producers over the years that swear by Reason, they swear by Pro Tools. Everyone has something that works for their needs. I think all DAWs are valid, and there is no concrete difference between all of them other than workflow and how the inner workings of the software flow together. Number 2, samples and loops are not cheating. You heard that right. Pieces of audio like samples and loops are indeed a very integral part of the music making process, and sometimes they can even inspire you to do things you wouldn't have even made yourself when it comes to your own song. There's a common misconception that samples and loops are a shortcut or a way to achieve a great sound for your song without actually putting in the work, but I personally disagree. There have been many instances in my production career where, let's say there was a sound that I had in my head, but I had kind of a hard time putting it to paper or putting it down on the DAW, and finding a really good sample, a really high quality audio loop to kind of tuck into my mix or to bulk it up or to make it sound a little different just pretty much made the whole mix sound better overall, or just gave me a different direction that I wanted to go down. You can also do different things like cut up loops, you can reverse them, you can add different effects on them like saturation and reverb, different ways of modulating the sound to fit whatever piece you're working on. In fact, sometimes there's a lot of lessons that you can learn from studying loops or pieces of music that other musicians have put together for producers and engineers. And sometimes throwing a pitch down sample around here or there can even make or break a track, or sometimes adding a little vocal layer, or sometimes even resampling parts that you've created yourself either with MIDI or a real instrument that you own can unlock a whole different way of using it in your mix. There's also thousands and thousands of different ways to manipulate samples, loops, and other forms of one-shots in your production. I plan to emphasize on that a little more in future content. Number 3, you can learn so much from music of any genre or style. I personally relate to this. I used to be strictly, if we rewind about like 9-10 years ago, you would only catch me making dubstep, electro house, and drum and bass beats. Fast forward those same 9 and 10 years, and I pretty much work on any genre that is sent my way or things that I personally feel like traversing into. That is the result of learning and kind of branching out and listening to stuff that maybe I'm not 100% comfortable with or knowledgeable about. I know that probably a good 40 to 50% of music I listen to now is sometimes stuff that was recommended to me from a client, or stuff that I thought was just great that I stumbled across randomly while browsing through SoundCloud or Spotify. And some of the techniques in all of that new music, you could really learn a thing or two that you can even implement into some of the most basic types of beats or instrumentals that you're working on. I highly recommend having a playlist that's kind of a musical Frankenstein of different kinds of things that maybe you discover in your day-to-day, and maybe you can kind of weed through and listen to things, and maybe you'll go, oh, that bass line sounds really cool. I wonder if I put it into this kind of beat, what it would sound like. It's just a great way to keep an open mind and keep an open perspective when trying to come up with unique ideas. I can actually speak from personal experience. If we rewind those same 9-10 years, you would catch me maybe only having 1 or 2 guilty pleasures, or a couple of pop music pieces that I liked. And other than that, I was pretty much into anything that had double bass and screaming and heavy bass drops. But nowadays I find enjoyment in some of the most obscure or some of the most simple pieces of music, and sometimes I'll learn a thing or two from that I can apply to certain jobs or certain things that I want to work on. So always keep an open mind is pretty much what I should be calling this point. Number 4, tons of gear will not make you successful. You do not need expensive pieces of equipment to write quality music. and this is something that I've stuck by even as I've gotten more quality pieces of gear that have helped me through my career. I do think that sometimes getting a new piece of equipment can inspire something, or if you're looking for that specific kind of sound that comes from Antares Auto-Tune, or a specific saturator that you want, or maybe there's a Waves plugin that you really like the sound of. There's nothing like getting a specific sound from a device or from an instrument that you want to use. But in my personal experience, having more expensive gear most of the time doesn't necessarily make you better or more skilled at what you do. It's how you use the current tools that you have. For example, let's say you are able to buy like a $1,500 guitar. It's got all the nice polished inlays. It's got a really nice oak fretboard. It plays really nice on an amp. It sounds really good. It's got really nice tonality, and you're ready to roll. You're ready to start playing. If you don't know how to play it correctly, you're not going to do anything with it. Or if you don't know how to play by ear and just play little tiny riffs or kind of work your way up the fretboard, you're not going to know how to use it no matter how expensive it is. The same goes for studio equipment like MIDI keyboards, interfaces, headphones. If you're unfamiliar with using the equipment, regardless of how cheap or regardless of how expensive it is, you're not going to know how to use it when it comes down to actually performing and making the music. I have a personal example when it comes to this kind of thing. I had to go help family once, and I was up to my neck in jobs, and I had to take my mobile setup with me. I couldn't take any time off. I took my Mac Mini, my little LPK 25 key, one of my guitars, and my basic listening and interface equipment, and put it in a backpack and left for a month. My workflow stayed the same. My clients liked what I was putting out. I felt limited at first, but after a while of getting used to my smaller setup, sometimes I actually preferred it for certain jobs because it allowed me to focus on some of the more nuanced parts of the beat. For example, making more complicated chords that I'd normally be able to do on a bigger MIDI controller, I wasn't able to do on the small MIDI controllers, so I had to record in layers, which allowed me to think more about things like harmonies and music theory and yada yada yada, all that. It made me think a little more simpler about what I was sending, so I focused more on minimalism instead of maximalism. And again, this is not a tip to be mistaken with. If there's a specific sound that you're chasing that you want from a piece of software or from a piece of hardware, by all means, feel free to invest and feel free to chase that, but it is never a need. Number 5, go deep or wide, whether to choose a niche or to stay broad. This is a bit of a complicated one, so I'm going to go off the cuff on this one. I think that there's two types of people in our profession, and those are the people who go more broad, jack of all trades like myself, or there's people who choose a niche that they want to get really good at and they want to target that kind of sound. For example, there's people who are really great at making hip hop and R&B beats and doing vocal arrangements for that style, as there are also people who are really good at doing country and folk. And then on the flip side, there's people who are a little good at doing a little bit of everything. I think that's kind of a good thing to think of early on, especially depending on how serious you want to take music production or what really inspires you to make music in the first place. If you're really inspired by EDM or things with a lot of sound design, then that might be a niche that you might want to double down on. Or maybe you want to take those influences into places like rock and metal where you can start focusing on production beds for bands, or maybe you could take it into pop music and focus that into a lot of background foliage for pop productions. Choices are endless in this industry, and that's why it's good to think of this early on if you are going to take it seriously. Do you want to be someone who is known for doing a little bit of everything, or do you want to be someone who's known for doing really good at a specific thing? Those are just 5 things that I wish that I knew before I got started, just points of conversation that I wish I thought about maybe a little more clearly before I got started, and things that I considered before I made a few mistakes here and there. If you have any other topics that you want me to talk about in regards to production or composition, or maybe even some more of these, I have plenty of things I can talk about in terms of things that I just wish I knew before I got started. And the list just keeps going on and on, but we're going to start with these 5. I hope this inspired you, and I want to make more of these, so please inspire me to do more as well.